Hey guys, this is Arthur from Osmium. We are doing software development, if, in case you didn't know. And today, this is the second episode of our uh, podcast, which is called SaaS Navigator. And we have a really interesting person today with us. This is John. Please meet John. He's an expert and his whole company in sales. And he had a great experience of helping with sales to SaaS companies. So, welcome, John. Happy to see you.
Hello. Great to be here. Really excited to be on the podcast.
Yeah, we've done a little preparation, so I think the discussion will be really interesting. And I think like any company in the sector in any industry is like the main question is really are the sales. So even myself, we also sometimes we are struggling with sales. So basically, the sales is like I don't know, not a magic pill, but one of the most important. Even if you have a great product, there is always this problem with sales and sometimes with marketing as well. So yeah, shall we go? So the first question would be, John, as you're a founder, if I'm correct, of the company, what inspired you to start your company and why it was sales?
I'm one of the co-founders at MySalesCoach, and the story really comes back to my experiences both of being coached as a salesperson and then becoming a coach for salespeople. So I had some great experiences, some great managers, some not great managers, but I found that managers that invested time in helping me to get better at what I did helped me to have better results as a salesperson. So then, as time went on, I had the opportunity to do some sales coaching for organizations, and I found that by helping people again with, their sales mindset, helping them with the tactical actions and activities that they took part in, it would just improve their results massively. Bringing my experience and my knowledge into helping other people to do the things that I'd done. And so when I went for lunch with my co-founders to talk about their future and what they were thinking of doing, and they started talking about this idea of sales coaching and helping sales professionals get the coaching they deserve. And it became a really easy decision to decide together to found my sales coach and to bring sales coaching at scale to organizations.
Mm. So basically, you guys are helping people. There is a I don't know if it's in English, but in Ukrainian, in Russian, there is a term that you need to have a certain amount of S hours. So sitting your ass doing some task to gain the experience, and basically, you guys are helping to gain these S hours faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I'll guess we should start speaking about helping about SaaS companies. So the first question about SaaS companies and sales: what are key steps that help you to grow sales in SaaS companies you worked with in your early days and today? What has changed as well?
Yeah, really great question. I think the starting point has got to be the problem that you solve, and becoming obsessed with that problem. If there isn't a problem that you can solve, that your SaaS business solves, if you've not got a really clear idea of that problem, it becomes really hard to sell. You're hoping that people will like it rather than focusing on a deep problem that it will fix for people.
Yeah, a lot
The
of people are thinking that having a good product is enough.
Yeah, absolutely. They think if it works well, if it is streamlined, if it's a bit sexy, that people will want to buy it. But yeah, you got to start with the problem, right? What problem is it solving, and then who is it solving it for? Like, who cares about solving that problem? As an example, I used to use a lot. I've got a nice office chair now, but I used to sit on a kitchen table chair to work at, which was not good. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't good for my back. But I had a standing desk, and so often I'd just stand up. And so I just didn't care about solving that problem. I had a problem, but I didn't care about solving it, and so I didn't buy a chair. Eventually that changed and I did buy a chair. But you've got to have a problem and somebody that cares about solving that problem. From there, it becomes, how do you speak to those people? How do you access those people, and how do you start that conversation with them? And I think that's where people really start to run into trouble because they don't know where to find them, they don't know how to speak to them, and don't always know how to access those people. But I think that's kind of the core one, and sometimes even in well-established businesses that have done quite well, they might not really understand the problem they're solving. They've definitely tapped into it, but they don't necessarily know it, and that makes scaling a sales organization and scaling revenue quite difficult.
So first step is understanding what problem you are solving, and as I understood, you also need to find the right audience for that, right? And this is a tricky part, as I may suspect. So we were creating our personal ICP, which is ideal customer profile. It's not that easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because sometimes the person that cares about solving that problem isn't somebody that has the money to spend. And other times it's the other way around. You've maybe got the people that feel the problem, but they don't care about solving it, but the person with the money does care about solving it. And so it's quite hard to connect all those dots. And sometimes the person that cares the most about the problem is not the best ICP because they just don't have that ability to do anything about it. It's not something that they can do anything to fix. And so you've got to find that balance of care about the problem, has the money and incentive to fix it, and the ability to do so. And working that out can be quite difficult and takes a bit of trial and error, especially if you're the founder and you care about that problem really deeply, and so you think it's going to be other people like you, but there's maybe a reason that not everybody that's had your experience is doing the same thing, right? Because they're not always the ones that recognize that need. And so you've really got to kind of do a bit of knocking on doors and and having those conversations to work out who that right person is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm thinking that all customers are thinking the same way as I do, but no, actually it's not. All right, and let's go from positive standpoint. So we will discuss also a negative standpoint of sales, but let's begin with the positive one. So what decisions or strategies from your experience had the biggest impact on sales in SaaS?
Yeah, I think a really big one is kind of what model you want to go for in terms of generating opportunities. I think that's something that can be really difficult to do for two reasons. One, sometimes we ask ourselves how we want to be sold to, and that can be a question that drives us down the wrong path. Nobody really wants to be sold to. Nobody is sat there hoping that they're going to be sold to. And so asking that question, how do I want to be sold to, can make us think, oh, well, maybe it's over email. I want to have time to do my research and to do my homework. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right way to sell. And so, there's lots of different ways to go about kind of how you approach prospects, how you try and create conversations with them. But I think the right question to ask is what is the routine of the people I'm selling to? Where do they spend their time, and how do they care about the problem that they're experiencing? That might mean that because of their ability to spend money, the price point you're selling at, all those things, it might mean that it actually does mean that you want to do more inbound campaigns, right, that drive interest to you. Maybe there's a reasonably low price point that you're at, which lends itself to a more inbound model. Maybe you've got people who who are low budget holders, or you need consensus purchase, and so you want to again drive that inbound model to know where to start in an organization. But if you've got an average kind of order value of £15,000, €15,000, $50,000 more, really you probably should be thinking about outbound and how you proactively find exactly the right ideal customer profile, ideal customers to start selling to.
And just a random question. So, does actually like cold calling still works?
That's a great question, and lots of people will have this debate, but the short answer is yes, it does. We internally we run a huge outbound process, mostly cold calling. We don't do very much cold emails, and the vast majority of our meetings come from cold calling. The vast majority of our pipeline does. I think the reasons people think it doesn't work are because they don't like taking them, or they don't get very many, which clears the floor a little bit, right? It's very easy to stand out with some good, well-placed cold calls to the right people with the right problems. It opens doors. It opens doors. I think there's definitely people that it doesn't work as well for, but we find across ourselves and across our customer base that it's a great channel that still works.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same. So I had a little experience with cold calling, and it was not very successful because I was doing it by myself. So, but when I was getting cold called, I had also different experiences. So I have had a positive experiences where people, kind of knew that I was the audience. So I'm an entrepreneur, and they knew it, and they knew some of my pain points, and they were leading the conversation. And I was like, in the beginning, I was like, another cold call, but at the end, I was like, okay, let's try it. And in a different approaches, when people called me, I was not really interested, and they were pushing the line that I'm not interested in. They didn't know I'm not the right audience, and the script is wrong by itself in because of that, and there is no point of making this cold call. So I guess it's about the understanding of what you are doing and the structure of it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you speak to the right people with the right problems, you won't have a bad experience cold calling. And it doesn't feel like a bad experience getting those cold calls, because it feels additive, even if those aren't your biggest priorities. You're like, okay, yeah, other people must be thinking about this problem. I'm thinking about it as well. Okay, I'm doing the right things. It's a little bit validating that you're doing something right in your business to care about that problem. But yeah, as you say, if the problem's not relevant, if they don't know who you are and why what they're talking about would be relevant, it feels so disconnected. And I think that's why people think that it doesn't work, because so many people don't cold call in a very targeted way.
Okay. And let's go to the bad side of the things, the dark side. So the Sith side, Lord Sith. What are the bad practices in sales? What are the biggest mistake that can be made?
I think there's a huge list here, but the ones that I see most commonly are either overhiring, like hiring too many salespeople too quickly when you don't really know enough to know that it's the right thing to do. So we see many businesses who get all excited. Maybe they receive some funding and they decide to go and splash all of it on sales teams straight away when they don't have a repeatable sales process. They don't know who their ICP is, and they don't really know what they're doing. And so they end up hiring a load of people who don't succeed, and then they have to cut back, and it becomes a real mess. The other side to that is where people underinvest, not necessarily in terms of people, but underinvest in learning what it's going to take to be successful. So you talked a little bit about doing some cold calls. You were on your own. Like that is an underinvestment because immediately it is difficult, it is hard, it doesn't bring immediate success. And so if you'd have hired somebody to do that and left them on their own, you would have believed, okay, cold calling doesn't work, outbound doesn't work. But it's not really a test. You've not really given it the right time and investment to validate that it's not working or that it is working. And so
How do I know that this is the right amount for the test?
Well, I think that's a good question, and that is a difficult question to answer because it's so varied. I think the first part of that, and it kind of leads me in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, so we can get back to the bad practices after that.
Well, no. I think it's worth touching on, and maybe we'll come back to it again later. But I think as a founder, if you haven't sold to 10 customers, you're probably not ready to test with anybody else selling, right? If you've not found 10 customers, you're probably too early to say, why don't I get a salesperson in and we can do some testing with them? Because you need to have enough conversations to know, right, what does our ideal customer sound like, look like, feel like? When I speak to them, what are the things that make them likely to buy versus not likely to buy? Which if you can sell to 10 people, you're okay. You're on a good path there. And so I think that would be my starting point is, have you sold to 10 people your product yet? If not, don't start with somebody else because you haven't done it and you don't know what's going to work and what's not. I think then it's about really thinking through why you're going to go down the path you're going to go down and doing it with intention. So are we going to hire? Who are we going to hire? What are we going to hire? What is our parameters and validation from other similar size organizations to what the right things to do are to invest in that team? I personally am a fan of hiring salespeople in twos. If you hire one person, leave them on their own, you're inviting them to not succeed. Whereas two of them, they can learn from each other. It amplifies the speed at which they can ramp and the speed at which they can learn from what's working and what's not. And then also making sure that you hire people that want to do that job and that are maybe more in the pirate category than in the Navy category. They're a little bit ready to go into battle without necessarily having all the right resources, but that are as passionate about the learning as they are the process.
But yeah, let's come back to the test. So, how I know it's a personalized experience, but how do I know that the time amount and money spent on some theory or method for selling is enough to call it a test?
Yeah, so I think money is probably the wrong metric. I think it's probably conversations. Like conversations is probably the test I would give any process. So as an example, if you're trying outbound prospecting, I would start by measuring conversations had, not calls made, not emails sent, conversations. I think if you're having less than 100 conversations, you've not even scratched the surface yet. Now, if you're having, I think 10 cold calls where you have a conversation and they're not interested tells you it's not working. But 100 conversations where it is working is a real validation that you should double down on that. I think it's really, I can't give you a fixed answer, but I think yeah, if it's not working and you're having conversations, there's things to iterate on, and it's all about why it's not working. What is the point in those conversations that it gets shut down? If it's before we get into the problem statements, you don't know yet, right? That's a skill problem of getting into the conversation. if you're delivering problem statements and they're not resonating, okay, let's talk about the problem statements. Let's iterate on what's being said. And I think that's where it's hard to give an answer, because it's not about overall is it working or it's not. It's about working out at what point in the process is it not working versus have we tested enough. And so I think and that's why I think you've got to have done it a little bit yourself as the founder to be ready to hire anyone else to do it. You've got to have a little bit of a flavor for, okay, here's what I experience when I sell this, with a recognition that the founder tends to find some of these things easier, even if they're uncomfortable, because you've got that job title, you've got that credibility, but knowing a little bit what success feels like helps you to then validate, right, where in the process is this breaking down?
Okay, great answer. So let's a little bit come back. So we were speaking about bad practices, and you said that under budgeting and over budgeting is also bad. What happened? Nothing happened. So over budgeting and under budgeting. Having the sales as a founder is important, and you should do it. Maybe we missed something. Is there anything else to be added?
Yeah, I think if you rely on like mass scattergun approaches, you're probably doing the wrong things. There's learning to be had in speaking to a lot of people. But it all comes back to who do we believe the ICP is, and really focusing on a well thought out process of who that should be. If you just send thousands of emails to a list that has no relevance, you're wasting everybody's time, your own and anybody that you email. And so it's really about focusing on a well thought out plan for who the right people to speak to is, and having branches to that. Like, who do we believe is our best, second best, third best, and targeting that structure. And then also like trying to hire, I guess this is the other one, hiring a sales leader before you have sales people is probably the wrong way to do it. Which sounds controversial, but as a founder, you probably need 2 people consistently hitting quota before you bring in a leader. And the reason for that is that if you have salespeople that are not hitting quota and you bring in a leader, they will fire those salespeople and hire their own in. If you hire a leader before you hire salespeople, then that leader will not sell. They will want to hire salespeople. And really, when you're being budget conscious at all, your priority is having sales happen, not building a sales structure. And so it's almost the order that matters. And so, yeah, if you hire a sales leader first, that isn't somebody that's going to pick up the phone, speak to customers and sell and take a quota, that kind of sales leader is okay, right? If they're willing to sell, worth considering, but you should treat them as an account executive before you treat them as the sales leader.
Totally agree, and I like the well-planned approach underlined, because this is one of the most important. You always want, as a young founder, they always want, and me myself, I am kind of a person that rushes into the battle, but you need to have a really well-planned structure of what you will do, step by step. Even though it's not what you want to do, you would just want to rush into battle and swing your axe and sell like Grant Cardone or Wolf of the Wall Street, or something like that. Okay. We've touched a question about building a sales department and stuff like that. But when you actually need to build a sales department, you mentioned something about you need to sell first as a founder. Is this the main metric that needs to happen to you understand as a company that you need to start the sales department, or is there anything else?
I think that's the main one. I think when you've sold to that first 10 customers, it's probably time to think about building a sales function. Um, I think before that, you don't know enough about what that process should look like, and it doesn't have to be super well documented. It doesn't mean that it has to be sophisticated, but here's the order of activities that happened that then led to us closing a deal. At that point, you can bring in a couple of salespeople who are that pirate style, who are, going to iterate and learn and develop and elevate that process a little bit. But before that, yeah, you're just at risk of bringing someone in and setting them up to fail, because you're asking them to do your job as the founder, which is learn why people should buy from us. They will iterate on why people should buy from you, and they will add to that. But earlier than 10 customers, you're probably asking a little too much of them. If you wait too long at that point, you can fall into the trap of the founder being the only person that can ever sell. You become somebody where, or you can fall into the trap of believing that nobody can do it better than you, and that might be true. But if you believe that and think about that, it becomes really hard to let go of that process. And so it is about balancing and kind of riding that line. I've come across an organization recently that were at 50 million in revenue, and 90% of that had been sold by the founder. Which is great for the founder, but it's not great for that business getting to 100 million in revenue, or to, above and beyond that. And so, yeah, you don't want to fall into that trap of believing your own hype. Now, the founder should always continue to sell, right? That's never something you can let go of. But if you're the core salesperson for much longer beyond that, it can get really easy to fall into that trap. Once you've got those first two salespeople in, the core metric to think about a leader is once you've got both of them hitting quota consistently month on month. At that point, you're probably ready for somebody that can then take what they're doing, codify it, and scale it up beyond there.
It's really interesting. Like, Reddit will kill me if I don't ask this question, because, like, not all founders are, extroverted enough to make sales on their own. So I was also an introverted person. I had a job that I needed to do as a project manager in the past. So I had to speak with people, and that's how I started speaking with people more and more. I had to sell and to speak with people. So, but if we're talking about someone technical who built his SaaS application and he wants to have sales, but he doesn't really like to speak with people. Does he need to improve himself, or maybe found a co-founder? It's hard to give 50% to someone who is just selling. What should he do?
Yeah, I think that is a really, and you're right, Reddit would kill you for not asking me that question. My immediate response is you've got to work on it. You've got to find a way. I think the truth is, if you as the founder have found a problem that you are passionate enough to build a solution for, there is nobody better to talk about that problem. I also would argue that sales is not about extroversion and introversion. Sales is about understanding a problem, helping somebody else to understand that problem, and suggesting and recommending and consulting along a solution. And so some of the best salespeople I know are introverts. They have built some skills that sound extroverted and they can play a part, but they are introverts. They do not get energy from being with other people. They get energy from being alone and having alone time and working on problems. And so I think there is an uncomfortable truth where for the success of the business, you've got to get over that hump. It doesn't mean that you can't lean away from that in future, but you've got to start that process. I think your point there around having a co-founder though is definitely something that's interesting. I agree that you don't want to bring in somebody and give them 50% just so that they can go and sell. That probably isn't the right way to do it. I think the question is more. It's probably a question that's earlier in the process, right? Who are the people that you need to build around you to found the business that you want to found, and what does that look like? It might be that you need somebody who's not going to do sales, but is going to do sales and is going to do marketing and is going to do finance and is going to do a few of those other areas. It might mean that you need somebody who's going to sell and you sell with them, right? And you become a team that sells and talks about that. But I think if you're looking for somebody just to sell, you're probably not looking for a co-founder. You're probably looking for a reason to not get better at selling yourself. And so it's quite nuanced, but that would be my thoughts on that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, and I had such an experience in the past when I had like a product with VR connected, so the interesting application. Don't want to go into much details, but VR for architecture, and we had the problem that we were two technical guys that were not willing to, sell. We tried, but we weren't so successful. We were merely students of the university, and that's all. And we found this guy who was great sales, but it didn't come, successfully because the guy was not really interested even in the product. So we already knew how our product is solving problems and what it is needed for and who's the audience, and he was not really interested in the product itself and what it's solving. He was only interested in sales. So I guess the main advice here is to find someone who will be really interested in the product, not just making sales and saying, "Hey, I have a percentage in the company. I sold enough. Goodbye."
Yeah, absolutely. I think in particular at early stages, you got to find people that are obsessed with that problem, that are obsessed with the problems that you solve, and then not that selling becomes easy, but it becomes easy to want to talk about that problem to people that are experiencing that problem. Somebody that just cares about selling is probably better suited to a later stage point in the journey, right? Where there is a process already, there are existing customers and testimonials, and they can plug in and follow that process and be a great salesperson. They're not the pirates, they're the Navy. They're not the pirates that get you going.
Okay, and as we spoke about when you need to start a sales department, like how do you actually start it and how to hire the right people into your team? So what is the execution phase? How it's look like?
So I think that first point is really detailing, and not that it has to be sophisticated, but what are the things that have worked, right? What are the ways that we spoke to customers, job titles of those customers? What is it about those customers that helped us to have those first 10 customers? I think from there, the first salespeople you recruit should be people that have sold before, right? You want people that definitely have closed deals, have had success in previous organizations, but you're probably not looking for people who have worked at large organizations. You're probably not looking for people that have been at Salesforce or at Oracle or at Monday.com, right? Even if you're in a similar industry, those people are coming from organizations that have large marketing budgets, they have large events budgets, and existing customers coming out of their ears to rely on, to talk to involve, and partnerships and all of that kind of stuff. You want people that have done it on a shoestring. Even if you've been funded and have lots of resources to offer, if you're at this early stage, you want people that are used to doing it in creative ways and that are going to take real ownership of that. So look for people that have maybe been at other startups before, people that have been on that journey from 0 to 1, or from, maybe even from kind of 0 to 1 million, or even 1 million to 2 million or 3 million, and people that are probably slightly weird, right? They tend to be people that are not necessarily your stereotypical salesperson. They maybe are obsessed with understanding problems. They're obsessed with maybe the industry, like not necessarily somebody from the industry, but maybe they're obsessed with kind of the journey that you're trying to go on. They've been in and around it, or have sniffed it out. But yeah, people that are kind of in that stage of really caring about the problem you solve. You're definitely looking for people that are wanting to be in your business. That can be hard. That can be really hard. I think it takes a lot of networking. I think it takes a lot of reference checks for people that you interview, like speaking to previous employers, speaking to people that they've worked with in the past is something that's really valuable there. And just making sure that you're looking for those creative problem solvers that are willing to work without guidelines and without rules to get them started.
Okay. Whoa. That was good. So, all right. Yeah, I guess you like covered a lot of the stuff. And I had another question, but maybe I'll recall it a little bit later. Anyways, so we've spoke about a lot of aspects of the sales, and you guys are basically, as I understand, maybe involved in any of this stage and know how to do it correctly because you have many years of experience for that. So as you're still doing it and will do it because sales something you like, and it's like the main approach of that I'm having with my business as well. I like to do it. So basically, yeah. What are your plans, and what is the next level of your company do you think should look like?
Yeah, great question. I think for us the buzzword that kind of summarizes it is AI. It would be remiss of us on a podcast not to talk about AI at the moment. But both internally for our team, it's something that is on the agenda of every meeting that we have. How do we utilize AI to be more efficient, more effective, more focused? So in our go-to-market, in our sales team, we're using AI to make it easier to build lists of ideal prospects, to make it easier to find those people and convert them into people that we should be reaching out to. For our customer success team, it's about understanding who our kind of customers are that we need to spend more time with or less time with, and how we kind of filter data so that our CS team can spend more human time with customers, doing the right things with them. And then countless other things across the business. And then for our product, it's how do we enable our coaches to be more effective more often by using AI to bridge the gap between sessions. So whether that's giving the coach the information they need to dive straight in a coaching session to the things that are going to be most valuable for that coachee, or helping tap the coachee on the shoulder when they do things in their day-to-day work, to help them, you just moved an opportunity from stage A to stage B. Have you thought about understanding this? Or here's some questions that you can ask, or whatever that tactical guidance might be. Or you've just done this. That was something you talked about with your coach. Here's what your coach said to remind you of that value and remind you of that thing. And so, yeah, both internally and externally, it's all about how we utilize AI to help us grow faster, be more valuable to our customers and to our partners and to our coaches, and kind of scale up as we go.
Mm. And as I say, like it's my personal opinion, but as I usually say, AI is just a tool. It depends how you use it. So if you use it right way, you will get a great results. If you don't know how to use it, if you have no idea how to implement it into your current processes, hiring, sales, maybe infrastructure, into your business technically, like with the software, it will not work if you don't know the reason why you need AI and how you will use it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and just quite reminded my thought about the previous one, so maybe anyone will be interested. So yeah, you said about hiring the people from a big company, so and why that may be bad because they have a well structured budgets and strategies and everything is built. So I had the same. Exactly the same situation, but with project managers in our company, one of the companies that I worked in early days. So it was so easy to be a project manager when there is an instruction for anything, for any process. Don't even need to know how to, put in information, a text into a file. You can do everything with the instructions. But what happened later when I moved to another company, when there was no structure, I felt like, oh, there are no processes standardized. And I need to decide, do I like go in all random or trying to build something in the middle, or do I just build my own processes in this company? So I went for this, and it was not so easy. So yeah, I totally agree. You need to find someone who had this experience in small or middle companies because it's so easy to do when everything is already built by professionals.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's really a very different skill set, and I think that that easiness doesn't discredit the quality of those people. Like you still need to have some really deep expertise and skills, but it's the application of those different skills in different scenarios that is I guess, the nuance that makes somebody either a really good fit or really not a good fit, even if they've got an amazing CV for certain opportunities.
Okay, and let's do a little interactive. I didn't tell you anything about this will happen, but let's do a quick blitz questions if you don't mind.
Sounds
So,
good.
from 1 to 10, AI will overcome and help or not? Will it be useful or not? From 1 to 10.
10 will definitely be useful.
Okay. Cold calling from 1 to 10.
10, very useful.
Cold emailing.
Ooh, like a 3. There's still a place for it, but it's low on the list.
Okay. Founder selling.
Fan styling, 10. Always valuable. Always valuable to do.
Okay. Maybe there something else with the methods of sales. Let me think. I know, like emails, prospecting, and stuff like that. Yeah, interesting idea. Like if we sell SaaS with a advertisement on the streets, like on billboards, from 1 to 10.
Uh, ooh, like an 8. I think some there's real value there, but you've got to really know your audience. You got to really know your audience.
And having an ICP from 1 to
Oh,
10.
10, 10. The most important thing. The most important thing.
Okay, I'd say even 11.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Whew, right, that was a really good podcast, as I say, and I think we can even do another one if the audience like. Let us know in the comments for these videos. We will post it on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So let us know if you have any more questions for John, because a lot of questions may be asked about sales. We can discuss it for hours. Usually our podcast is about like 25-30 minutes, but with John, obviously, it was really interesting enough to, and we didn't even cover, I think, even half in this podcast. So if you have some ideas and if you want to hear him more, please let us know. And maybe we will do another episode of podcast with John. John, it's may be really interesting for people to follow you along your path as a sales consultant company. So where people exactly can find you, and maybe you have some kind of a blog that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is the best place to find us. I'm John Richardson on LinkedIn, or MySalesCoach. And then, at the moment, we have a blog around how we're utilizing AI to double our meetings booked over the next couple of months. So, definitely worth having a look at that and finding out.
All right. Great. So I think that's it for today. So thank you guys for being here with us. And I think it was a great conversation, honestly. So thank you again, John, and hope to see you soon on our podcast.
Thank you.